Ronin Gizmo by Ori Igwe. Episode 1, Cell Number 013. There was something profoundly unsettling about Cell Number 013. The urgent security measures to prepare the room for the expected but unwanted guests created an uncanny atmosphere of tension. Guards moved with practiced efficiency, checking windows and securing entry points, their faces betraying no emotion, though their eyes remained vigilant. The staff exchanged nervous glances as they arranged the sparse furnishings, each item carefully inspected for potential threats. A chill seemed to permeate the walls despite the warm afternoon, as if the building itself sensed the impending arrival of someone who brought nothing but catastrophe and doom wherever he threaded. "A new prisoner arrives tomorrow?" A sharp voice pierced the silence as Dakota Correctional Prison's top operatives gathered around a conference table in the officers' mess to address an urgent matter. The director's announcement hung in the air like a cobweb, carrying more weight than any declaration of war. A top warden officer shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his weathered fingers tapping against the polished oak table. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with cigar smoke and secrets. Only silhouettes sat around the round table, their faces swallowed by shadow, their voices sharpened to whispers. "Not just any prisoner," the prison director continued, "but a celebrity among prisoners." "And who might that be?" an officer asked, curiosity etched on his face. The director leaned closer, his grim feature looming like a phantom across the table. "Ronin Gizmo." Suddenly, the air in the room either held its breath or thickened, making it difficult for them to breathe. Upon catching his breath, one officer said, "Did you say Ronin Gizmo? The Ronin Gizmo?" "Yes, aka the Ghost," replied the director. Three officers gasped in unison, terror sketching contour marks on their faces. "We can't contain him," one of them squirmed. "He's a walking time bomb." Another adjusted his glasses nervously, the reflection of the single overhead lamp catching in the lenses, as he exchanged a nervous glance with Chief Executive Officer Dawson, the director of Dakota Correctional Prison, whose jaw had visibly tightened. "And you accepted this crazy mandate, Chief?" "The order came from above," replied the director, shrugging. "It's not open for debate, and we have to make arrangements." "It's too dangerous," insisted another officer. "Why don't they take him to Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison?" "Too far," replied Director Dawson. "Ronin is the sleekest, smoothest criminal in the country. His antics are way beyond predictability. Our facility is the safest net to contain him, by proxy, for now." "I'm not comfortable about this, Chief," offered another officer, shifting nervously on his seat. "Neither am I," said the director, "but we have a duty to perform. Cell number 013 must be our top priority focus of attention from now on." A pause followed, long, uneasy, almost reverent. Even here among the highest echelons of command, the designation was spoken like a curse. Then he continued, "He requires maximum security, not for his safety, but for ours." Again he leaned forward, his ring tapping the wood in a slow rhythm. "This one, he isn't just dangerous. He's the kind of danger that outlives walls, shackles, and orders." No one else spoke. None were needed. Only the silence that followed, a silence that meant consensus. The order was sealed. Dakota Correctional Prison would house him. "Alone," said the director. Then he frowned as though struck by a sudden realization. "No, he must never be alone. He will remain under constant surveillance." A wicked grin of satisfaction creased his countenance. "Always." The Dakota Correctional Prison, a maximum security facility and one of the most formidable institutions in Nigeria, should have taken pride in housing the nation's most dangerous criminal. Yet despite its flawless record of preventing escapes since inception, the facility harbored a deep discomfort with this arrangement. Dakota transcended the concept of a mere fortress. It existed as a labyrinthine dungeon, bristling with unpredictable booby traps that appeared to possess a malevolent intelligence of their own. Those who had dared attempt escape invariably suffered gruesome fates, their broken bodies serving as grim testimonials to the prison's ruthless efficiency. This absolute impenetrability stood as the prison's hallmark, inspiring dread in even the most hardened criminals, who, upon hearing its name, would feel their blood run cold. Guards patrolling its shadowy corridors often boasted in arrogant tones about the walls themselves, watching, listening, daring inmates to escape. Some even claimed to hear the faint whispers of those who had perished trying to breach its defenses. The very air within Dakota hung heavy with despair, crushing inmates' spirits long before their sentences had run their course. For that, the Dakota Correctional Facility accepted to host the inmate of cell number 013, but on one condition, that he must be constantly kept under strict surveillance at all times. Why? Because cell number 013 contained not merely a prisoner, but Nigeria's most lethal living weapon ever created. The guards who patrolled outside its reinforced steel door spoke of him in whispers, their eyes darting nervously whenever his name surfaced in conversation. Even the wardens, extra vigilant men who had overseen the incarceration of warlords and serial killers, felt their mouths go dry when required to approach this particular cell. What made this captive so terrifying wasn't his physical strength or violent outbursts. It was the calculated intelligence behind his eyes, a predatory awareness that seemed to strip away all pretenses and peer directly into one's soul. His military records spoke volumes of him as both the greatest hero and the most dreaded villain his country had ever forged, as a lethal, living killing machine. For this prisoner was once the most decorated undercover agent of the Cyan Agency, an acronym for the Secret Intelligence of Nigeria, a military intelligence agency so classified it did not officially exist. As an undercover agent, he had served his country well in matters of secret intelligence, and had come out the most decorated agent as a result. How he ended up in this shithole of a prison was another story altogether. However, part of the story went that he committed some crimes so heinous that they canceled all the patriotic deeds he ever did for his country, thus turning rogue and becoming the most dangerous criminal in Nigeria. The prime reason for his label was that he did not need any weapon to kill anybody he set his mind or he was assigned to terminate. He was the weapon. Presently, inside cell number 013 of one of the most fortified prisons in the country, the Dakada Correctional Prison, aka Dakop, located somewhere in Uyo, the prisoner in reference stood in front of a graphically designed wallpaper pasted on the prison wall, gazing intently at it. Obviously, he was thinking. As always, his cellmate, reclining on the bed, gazed quizzically at the back of his companion. His eyes drifted to the wallpaper, then returned to study his fellow prisoner once more. "Hey, Ronan," cellmate said, breaking the silence. The inmate, Ronan, slowly turned to face cellmate, his face calm yet unassumingly dangerous. Ronan Gizmo, also known as the Ghost, was formerly a top sin agent, turned notorious convict, and ultimately branded as the most dangerous criminal in the history of Nigeria. Even in this well-guarded cell, Ronan Gizmo had a handcuff on his wrists, while cellmate had none. That's how trustworthy Ronan was. "What's with the wallpaper?" asked cellmate. "You've been staring at it for like forever." "Just thinking?" Ronan replied contemplatively. Cellmate stared at him. "Thinking? About what?" Ronan turned back to face the wallpaper. "Can you keep a secret?" he asked. "Sure, man. You can trust me on that," replied cellmate. Ronan turned, stared straight into cellmate's eyes. Cellmate could not match up with Ronan's piercing gaze, so he glanced down uncomfortably. "Whoa, what?" Ronan scoffed. "Rule number 1, never make a promise you cannot keep," he said like a taskmaster. At this statement, cellmate became confused. "I don't understand," he said. "You just said I can trust you," Ronan reminded him. "Yes," replied cellmate with a bit of hesitation. Ronan scoffed. Again. "You sure about that? A bit edgy?" Cellmate stuttered. "Sure, bro." "I don't think so." Ronan went back to staring at the wallpaper. And chewing on these nerve-rattling words, cellmate knew for a fact that Ronan Gizmo was the reason why there was something profoundly unsettling about cell number 013. To be continued. Stay tuned for episode 2.